We are living through very turbulent times, and these turbulent times show up after a succession of crises and shocks which are experienced not only in Europe but of course globally. Obviously, we are going through a dramatic shock effect from the Russia-Ukraine crisis. We have come back from a COVID crisis and earlier from the financial crisis, and all these crises build on each other. There are certain legacy effects in terms of different countries having different rooms of maneuver in terms of fiscal space to counter one or the other shocks, and they accumulate. One of the central topics, of course, in Europe is who is taking care of countering these shocks. Yeah? And usually one thinks of national states, but in Europe, of course, there is an additional level, which is the European level, the supranational structures we are developing. And many of these issues turned out that you can't deal with them at the national level anymore. And therefore, the issue of integration, how the integrated process of the EU is able to cope with that structure. So I think we are keen in this conference to make sure we cover the rather differentiated impact and reactions in different countries, and of course also the differentiated impacts on different parts of society.
The conference marks for the Central European University its 30th, actually we should say 31st birthday. Major mission of the university at that time, 30 years ago, was to promote democracy, open societies, market societies, liberal democratic institutions in the post-communist world. That mission, unfortunately, is not only not accomplished, that whole project of furthering liberal democracies is being undone in front of our very eyes. What we are seeing is the deliberate, slow, systematic dismantling of liberal institutions, hollowing them out from the inside, not only in this region, but in Asia, in Latin America, South Asia, Southeast Asia. And doing that, dismantling democracy from the inside using electoral majorities. So the elections are formally correct, they are free, but they are not fair because the rules of the game are being changed in many ways. This makes CEU's mission ever more urgent and relevant.
Well, we have integration inside the European Union, but still there are differences and different opinions and attitudes. And we have perhaps a new Iron Curtain if we look to the relationship to Russia especially. And of course we have new influences coming from China and everywhere else. So I think the Institute is still engaged in informing the public and the decision makers about the new developments and new challenges and new integration and disintegration processes.
What happens globally affects Europe, and what Europe does affects the world. And that's one important lesson. I think for the situation now, in the long run and thinking historically, we might look carefully at the conflicts around energy politics from the last century. And ever since we became dependent on carbon as a fuel, the tensions around petroleum, coal, and so on have been driving geopolitics. And in that sense, Europe has always been at the center of global energy politics and will continue to do so because it is the one region in the world that is most dependent on imports of energy from other parts of the planet.
But what we can tell from the recent past is that Turkey has more and more left the path of normativity in relations with the EU. Relations have become more shaped by transactional relations, by common interests on various topics, for instance, migration management. But it doesn't go much beyond that. Having said that, Europe is still one of Turkey's major trade partners and political partners. So both parties can't really think in other terms. They need each other. And the development of the relations also depends, of course, on the course of political developments in Turkey. There are going to be presidential and parliamentary elections next year, and it doesn't look so well for President Tayyip Erdogan. The question is, what might happen if it's a tight win that is challenged by large parts of the opposition. How would Europe react? How would the opposition react? What if a broad coalition wins over Tayyip Erdogan? How will he react, and what will Europe's reaction be? Will they open their arms and welcome Turkey back into the accession process or not? It remains to be seen.
Well, at the moment it's all about plugging holes in the end. It's all about finding natural gas from Norway, from Qatar, from the US, replacing Russian gas, which has been drying out. And so a lot of what European countries are doing at the moment is just dealing with an emergency and a crisis. In the longer run, however, things look different, because a lot of the money that's being put into the system right now is money that will transform the system from a fossil system to a green energy system. The benefits of that we will see in a couple of years only, but that will actually deliver energy security and affordable energy to people. So that's going to be a change.
Well, on the policy side, evidence-based policy making and rights over policy making. On the communication side, it has to be clear what the benefits and what the costs possibly are, what the choices are about migration. And then there is the breaking the circle through where what we see is that those gaps backfire, and there we need a policy which actually alleviates the gaps and integrates immigrants, because we really see very strong effects of effective integration and immigration policies on reducing the gaps and actually fostering benefits from immigration. And the second part of your question, which was about what effects we can expect, well, we do find this in the data. There is quite strong evidence that the effects on wages, people fear negative effects. To the contrary, the effects tend to be more on the positive side, actually. Same for employment, especially in the medium to long run. There is no welfare shopping, really, and that's a myth, largely looking at the data. And so there are generally positive effects. Also, very strongly, we find evidence that immigrants are actually providing those qualifications and skills in those sectors and occupations and those countries where there are shortages. And so they improve the economy and they contribute to the host economy in many ways. And so if this is communicated properly and the connection between lived experiences of people is made with their voting behavior, voting preferences, then we can get from the vicious circle to more virtuous circle and more positive outcomes.
Citizenship is a two-faced topic. On the one hand, it signals some kind of equality inside the political community. On the other hand, there are huge inequalities that are linked to birthright citizenship that is not chosen, that you're just born into. Inside the European Union, citizenship has acquired another quality. It gives you now access to free movement rights in a large area and labor market. So we see a liberal trend with regard to individual access to citizenship, to toleration of multiple citizenships, and also more norms of gender equality in terms of citizenship. However, what we observe now in the context of the war against Ukraine is that citizenship also can be used as a weapon. Vladimir Putin is weaponizing citizenship by turning Ukrainian nationals into Russian citizens in order to have a pretext to protect them or to conquer the territory where they live. So citizenship is a multifaceted topic. It has a very nice liberal side, but it also can be used in deeply disturbing and illiberal ways to divide societies, and even as a weapon of aggression against other states.
So I think we can see that the conference has covered all these dimensions, the sociological, social policy dimension, the economic dimension, the political science dimension, and we hope we have made some progress. Of course, we have to communicate it also to a wider public of researchers, but also policymakers, to integrate all these disciplines, to study these very dramatic challenges which we are facing in Europe and beyond.